Welcome everybody from all around the world and happy Earth Day. And we hope that everyone will be inspired today to participate in rethinking the home of tomorrow.
The Great London Fire of 1666 just destroyed the better part of the city, but it actually led to fireproof buildings, system of fire hydrants, the modern insurance company, and really formed what we now know as modern London, the basis of modern London. The Lisbon earthquake of 1775 destroyed the city, but led to seismic engineering, safer buildings all around the world. The Great Chicago Fire of 1871 led to fireproof steel construction, high-rise cities, kind of established the form of the modern city. The London cholera outbreak of 1854 led to modern sewage systems, modern epidemiology. We're now dealing with a number of really serious challenges. One is global warming. We haven't, as a society, figured out how to deal with global warming yet. And we're in the middle of the pandemic, which, as the previous speaker mentioned, has led to tremendous inequities and in many parts of the world, depression scale unemployment. So we think that the planet is actually becoming a network of cities. And I believe that successful cities in the future will be a network of resilient communities. So the question that we ask ourselves is how can we enable more high performance, entrepreneurial, resilient communities? I like to go back in time to the best of the past when communities were vibrant, where people lived and worked and played and interacted, created all in compact neighborhoods with strong social ties, and then look to the future and deploy the best emerging technology and design ideas to create more resilient communities. And ideally, we would work towards a future where jobs and housing are in sync, essentially eliminating commuting, local access to resources, schools and shopping and recreation and culture all within walkable distance, production near consumption, producing energy, clean water, even many of our food products near the point of consumption. Now, in our group, we have generally four large categories of projects: simulation and consensus, sensing insight, light autonomy, mobility, and places of living. I'm going to talk a little bit about all these, but I'll focus more in this talk on our housing work. But starting with simulation and consensus, we've been working in this area for 20 years or so. We've built many different platforms that can help people design and to give them real-time feedback through advanced simulation models. Back in 2014-15, we started working a lot with Lego bricks because people would just play with them, and we could use color-coded Lego bricks that were, in this case, black was housing and white was offices, yellow was retail. And we found it a very powerful tool for rapidly prototyping urban design. Then we started projecting onto white Lego bricks, so we could project all kinds of different visualizations. We would have ways of revealing the metrics and how they would be affected by the various interventions that we were studying, agent-based modeling, et cetera. And we put all this together, but fundamental to our work are the metrics. Some combination of SDG and ESG metrics, environmental social governance metrics that the investment community uses. This is one way of looking at it. So here we look at density, employment density. Kendall Square, where MIT is, high employment density, high employment diversity, but very low residential density, very low residential diversity, only a few apartments for rich people as a result. Third place is cafes, restaurants collapse at night. And it's not really a functioning community, but we can then calculate the CO2 generation per person, the environmental performance, various social performance, innovation potential, wellness, safety, security. And then we can use layers of simulation. This is a project we did for a new central business district in Hangzhou China. We're looking at walkable access to parks. Red is bad, green is good. You replace a building oriented block with a park and get real-time feedback. Or Cityscope Champs-Élysées that we did, the most famous boulevard in the world, where we modeled the current conditions and then looked at the interventions that could improve this boulevard in 20 years, and the radar plot would update that you see up there in the corner in real time. We also use these kind of platforms for education. This is a project in the Cooper Hewitt Museum where we were modeling different futures, different alternative divergent futures. One, the sharing society, the other, more private ownership. And now we're about to launch a project at the Venice Biennale that looks at the communities of informal settlements in Guadalajara, Nigeria, and Cairo. So we've used these tools in many different ways. We now have Cityscope platforms all over the world, providing communities with real-time feedback as to the social, environmental, and economic performance of various proposals. Urban mobility, I'll focus a little bit on this because Michael Lynn was heavily involved with this. We've been working on various mobility prototypes since 2006. I'll just go through a few. This is Michael's master's thesis, which is called the green wheel. So electric motor and sensing to allow a rapid retrofit of a bicycle, or the robo-scooter that was developed with a Taiwanese company that folds and is integrated with a bike sharing system. Then about 2008, we started working on the city car. So what is a good citizen automobile for the city? It's one that uses very little space when parked. So 3 of these in one conventional parking spot. We like to build things, so we built a full-scale prototype. This had robot wheels, drive-by-wire, it could spin, it folds, so you step directly out on the curb. But when we finished this, we realized it was still a car, and the future was much lighter weight, community-oriented, much more sustainable vehicles. This is an early version of the persuasive electric vehicle, which is fundamentally a social robot designed to interact in natural ways with pedestrians and bicyclists. We did a series of these prototypes. This is the most recent one, where one calls for the vehicle like you would call for a rideshare and Uber, drive it under human power to the destination, where the autonomy is used for automated pickup and rebalancing, or in this case, to follow these 2 young women carrying packages, or an even lighter weight prototype, which is the autonomous bicycle that converts to an autonomous tricycle, and it goes on its way to pick up the next rider. Sensing and insight. We've done a lot of work to collect information about human activity. Data is the fuel of all of our work, and it's critical that we collect this information. We built little sensors that we can sprinkle around environments. We built the Place Lab back in 2003 to 2007, the most highly instrumented living environment ever built. I still think it remains that way, where we had hundreds and hundreds of sensors. We could know where people were, what they were doing, the objects they interacted with, the state of the environment, with very strict privacy preserving protocols in place, where we could then introduce an intervention and measure the impact of medication adherence or other health-related or energy-related interventions in the home. Or one project where we used this sensing was with Sylvania lighting, this context-aware tunable lighting, where the lighting system would dynamically adjust to the behaviors of people. She puts a pad of paper down, the lamp goes on. She picks up her phone, the red light goes on, indicating that she needs her privacy. We now have a new generation of sensing we call the termites, where we can collect very rich information about human activity and the state of the environment. We worked with IKEA, one of our sponsors, to instrument an apartment in Sweden where people would live for weeks at a time, much like our place lab, where we could then collect data about how they interacted with various systems or furniture in this living lab apartment. And now we're using a lot of telecom data. This is in Andorra, where we have 3 years of very fine-grained mobile phone activity data, location-based data, where we are now studying the impact of COVID-19 on the country and correlating the movement patterns to the serology data, the infection rates. Very interesting study for me. And then finally, places of living. We've been working in this area, again, for almost 20 years, actually a little bit over 20 years, whole series of prototypes. I'll just go through a few ideas that we're currently working on. How can we create more equitable, livable, high-performance housing? Well, I think there's basically 5 things one needs to do. One is faster, cheaper, better. In this case, building a prefabricated, high-performance, cost-effective, zero energy building frame or chassis. 2 is transformation, living large in less space, adding useful technology that can assist people, fractional ownership, new ownership financing models, bringing together the best features of renting and owning. And finally, maybe the most important, increasing the supply of housing in cities where it's artificially kept low by zoning. So let me step through this. So the prefabricated building chassis, we're looking at many different systems. The one that's most intriguing is cross-laminated timber, because this is a carbon positive material that can be manufactured in very large panels and create open loft spaces, all with wood finish surfaces, where we can create 1 bay, 2 bay, 3 bay, 4 bay, etc., volumes of space, and then fit them out with what we think of as modular infill. 2 is transformation. This is living large in less space. So our original city home project we did back in 2013 to 15 was about 19 square meters, but it had a queen size bed, a living room for 6, a dining room for 6 people, a fully functional office, and the whole transformable unit would open up to be a handicap accessible bathroom. Now, people thought this was kind of a crazy Media Lab idea, but we kept pushing this. We launched a company back in 2015, Ori Living, and we now have funding from IKEA and Google to commercialize this. This is a bedroom that converts dynamically to a living room, allowing you to have a 1-bedroom apartment in the space of a studio, but with a better designed bedroom and a better designed living room than is typically found. So now we're putting all these ideas together to create compact, transformable, high-performance apartments, where by shrinking the area that people live in and having the technology, we're creating much more affordable space, but much higher performance space. In this case, living modules, the storage module, micro kitchen module, bathroom module that are all prefabricated. So we put this together in different arrays, in this case, 1 bay, 2 bay, 3 bay, different states, sleeping, working, living, entertaining, etc. This shows one of hundreds, thousands of possible configurations, where there's a children's room where the bed converts dynamically to a desk space in this case, or the master bedroom where a living room converts to the bedroom, or walk-in, or in this case, a office on demand that collapses to create more space, or walk-in closets that open up on demand. And so by putting all this together, you can effectively double the utilization of space. 3, useful technology, assisting people. So we're very much interested in the challenge of aging, and gerontologists believe that the best early indicator of emerging physical and cognitive problems would be changes in activities of daily living. People don't like cameras in their home. So this is an AI camera that protects the privacy by never transmitting images. It processes the image at the camera, but recognizes the activities of daily living. And by the way, it can also be used to teach children a foreign language. Or food production. This is my home. Right off my kitchen, I'm experimenting with 4 different hydroponic systems. This is a time-lapse video I shot the other day over 8 days growing lettuce. So I now can grow all the lettuce and tomatoes and peppers that we need all throughout the winter, in fact. Or different materials that we can begin to incorporate. This is translucent, dynamically tunable glass that'll go from translucent to transparent. Or dialing up the desk in this little office space that we created that we call the escape pod, or in this case, he wants to take a nap, dials down the bed. So there's endless possibilities for integrating transformation. This may be the most powerful, though, of everything we're working on, fractional ownership. It's a hybrid model bringing together the best features of renting and owning, where we would create a live-work community designed as a mutual organization, and then the residents would have access to the apartment through fractional ownership. So you'd have the security of ownership with the flexibility of rental. So your ownership over time could increase. For example, you might start with 20% ownership, then over time increase that to 80% or 100%. The organization would reduce their fractional ownership as you build equity over time. And if we could create a network of these fractional ownership tokenized facilities, then an illiquid asset such as a condominium becomes a liquid asset where you can transfer your equity to other facilities in the network. And then finally, we have to increase the supply of housing to get that closer to the demand. So we can model, in this case, 12 micro units for one Lego unit in our Cityscope model. Look at the impact on energy consumption and commuting energy and innovation potential, et cetera, using these real-time platforms like our Cityscope, where you can see the radar plot that I talked about, updating in real time, various simulations, et cetera.
Hey, Kent,
Now I want to mention
just a quick
that
moment. You have about 1 minute left.
We are launching in 1 month an international design competition where we will challenge architects and planners and scientists and artists to bring their most creative ideas to help us find a new, much more resilient, sustainable, and cost-effective model for housing in the future. So, thank you for your time. These are just a few ideas related to resilient communities.